Forbes reports that Workman's new study revealed that only 26% of workers felt psychologically safe during the height of the coronavirus pandemic. And a higher level of stress, burnout, and a greater feeling of loneliness. Neil Pretty is on a mission to change that. He's the CEO and founder of Aristotle Performance and a 2020 Vancouver Top 100 Innovator. Neil and his team help their clients across 6 continents and multiple industries build higher psychological safety, learning, and accountability. With a focus on innovative, scalable experiences for leaders and team development, while also building organizational capacity. Pretty join me this week to talk in depth about psychological safety, innovation in business, and succeeding at a leadership level. I'm Kevin McShann. Let's have this conversation. A moment to formally welcome you to the program. Delighted to see you today, Bonnie, and I'm excited to learn all about your professional story. Great to be with you this afternoon, and thank you so very much for being here, Bonnie.
Thank you very much. Sounds like a good plan.
Yeah, so Neil, I'm wondering if we can start our conversation by you sort of giving me a 360-degree view on how you change the world and help people in their leadership journey. I'm fascinated, buddy, for you to tell me more.
Yeah, so I'm the CEO of Aristotle Performance, and we specialize in developing psychological safety in organizations. So leadership is one of the most influential parts of that. And my journey to where I am now really started in leadership at the age of 13 years old. I was in Army Cadets and, had leadership right from then. And by the time I was 15 years old, I was leading a platoon. And then I've been in some kind of leadership position ever since then. Worked all over North America with all just different kinds of people. By the time I was 32 years old, I'd led nearly 300 teams and, across that boundary now. And when I shifted into the corporate space, it was through coaching and career development. And then I didn't really at that time realize that leadership was not something that was taught as a unique skill inside of organizations. It was sort of go lead and see how you do. And I eventually specialized in developing, working with high potential leaders who were toxic, in part because I was the kind of person that was candid enough and caring enough to actually just speak to them in very plain language. Like, hey, this way of leading that you've developed isn't healthy and we need to work on it, and so I went through that path, and then that evolved from working with individuals to working with teams, and it evolved into working with entire organizations, from sort of an organizational design and consulting perspective, and it's just evolved. And then this element around psychological safety became sort of came into my world. I didn't sort of seek it out, or it kind of came to me by accident, and then picked that up and realized that this piece around psychological safety was probably the most common thing we have amongst ourselves as human beings. It's one of the most common elements of our human experience is the desire to be a part of a group and changing and adapting our behavior so that we fit into those groups. And in the wrong situations, we end up being someone completely different. And in the right situations, our whole self is welcome. And the things that are different amongst us lead to innovation. They lead to performance. They lead to, team learning behaviors and these more meaningful outcomes for people other than just being a number and sort of a cog in a wheel. We get to be ourselves, and organizations benefit from that. So it's like, for me, it became this calling to take all of my experience and combine it with other wonderful people that I work with, partners all over the globe. We've worked with organizations and teams on 6 continents now, which I'm very proud of, because that means that my impact and the impact of my team is exponential. And that's a core value of mine, to have exponential positive impact. And it's this challenge of doing something that benefits human beings at an individual level in their lives, but also benefits organizations, because people spend most of their lives sleeping or working. So if we can make an organization the kind of place that enlivens and enables the individual, then I think that's a real win. I think that's possibly the biggest one.
Yeah, absolutely. And you talk about psychological safety, and one of the reasons I wanted to talk to you about it is that I do a lot of work with folks with disabilities. I actually have cerebral palsy myself, and one of the passion projects that I have, Bonnie, is making sure that individuals with disabilities have access to a gainful and fruitful employment. So tell me about your view on diversity, equity, and inclusion when it comes to incorporating folks with disabilities into the workforce, Bonnie.
Yeah, so I actually really appreciate this question, because as a sort of cis white male who grew up in a middle to upper class family, the assumption would be that I haven't had a lot of chance to interact with a lot of people of diverse backgrounds. And that was the greatest gift of working all over North America with different teams, was seeing that if you take a human being and treat them a certain way, they're going to feel a certain way, and they're going to have certain expectations. And I think that's why the psychological safety piece became so important to me, because human beings have so much to offer. And if you create the conditions for them to offer that unique perspective, that unique life experience, that unique background, you can solve big problems a lot more easily, because consensus is the fastest way to mediocrity, and it's in the differences between us. If we care enough to incorporate the differences between us and start learning about each other, then we have the opportunity to grow. And I think so for me, the psychological safety ended up being this like foundational thing we all experience. So it became common ground to start that conversation. And psychological safety, the history of the research in psychological safety was actually in impression management. And the what sort of kicked off the research around impression management was all about learning readiness. So it's like, if we can create the conditions for psychological safety, we can create the conditions for learning. And if we look up the definition of learning, it's to gain new understanding. So to gain new understanding, we need difference as well. So not only do we benefit from our differences, we need difference and differentiation to grow and to innovate. And it's truly been the most amazing gift in my life to work with diverse groups of people and see the potential in them and try to create the conditions for them to live up to that potential that they haven't already seen for themselves. And so it's been a really beautiful journey. And I think the question around diversity, equity, inclusion, it's just the more ways we can include and incorporate more diversity, the more benefit there is. It's just, I see there's no loss to anyone if we put effort into those initiatives, that direction.
Yeah, absolutely. And I thank you for sharing that perspective. And Neil, tell me that congratulations is in order, because they tell me that you've been named one of the top 100 innovators, buddy. So tell me, what does that honor mean to you personally?
You know, it was a very strange honor. It came kind of out of left field, and it took me a long time to really consider it as something, to accept it, to really accept that was something that was of value. And I think what it really meant to me was doing, this was my seventh business, and being in diverse industries and working with diverse people. And so I think that's actually the reason why I'm comfortable with letting go of my old ideas. I love to think of myself as the person who's most comfortable with being wrong in the room, and I think that's actually what leads to innovation, is the ability to rethink, relearn, and adapt. And, for me, it actually, once I started to accept that honor, I really started to look and go, this is something that I really do aspire to and continue to aspire to, I would say I think that's what I would say about it, is really just, it is an honor, and it is such a core part of who I am, innovating and trying new things. It's one of the greatest joys of my life too.
Yeah, absolutely. Congrats again on such prestigious honor there, buddy. And building on that point, how do you think creative innovation and leadership are interconnected? So what does it mean to you to be a creative innovator?
I think it's connected to entrepreneurship to some degree, where entrepreneurs always have this, they see a problem in the world and they're just crazy enough to think they can solve it. And they might or might not have an answer to that yet. And I think the motivation is really being obsessed with a problem and being agnostic on the solution. Like, I am not particularly connected to any one solution. And as a result, that opens up a whole spectrum of solutions. And the call to action, instead of let's go out there and try to see how right we are, it's let's go out there and see how many different ways we can accomplish the same goal. And I think that's the connection. And when connecting that to leadership, when you're leading, management is a job, and there's tasks associated with it that you're often asked to do. But leadership is a relationship, and every relationship is a little bit different. So how do you adapt to the person you're leading, to the team you're leading, to level them up and enable them to reach a potential they thought was unavailable? You also have to have that sort of agnostic approach. The problem or the challenge is getting someone to a new level they didn't think was possible. The solution might look very different for very different people. So then as a leader, I think that's the connection, is you kind of have to innovate your style in some way to meet people where they're at.
Yeah, absolutely. And Neil, we share a similar synergy, and I believe in having quality conversations to get to the root of the heart of a matter, for whether it be an individual or a company or anything in between. I think it always starts with quality conversations. And you tell me by having quality conversations, it'll help determine the quality of your business decisions. I'm wondering if you can tell me more.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree with that statement more, and I've actually shared very similar things with teams. You know, like the quality of the conversation will determine the quality of your outcomes, but also, you know, everything in life is a series of conversations. You know, and I my business partner in particular has probably heard me say this hundreds of times, but you know, if you ever doubt the importance of a conversation, remember that the greatest outcome of a conversation was your birth. Conversation is the thing that keeps us awake at night. The conversations that we've had that didn't go the way we want, and the conversations that we haven't had. That's what keeps us up at night. So, to anyone who doesn't think that a conversation that has meaning isn't a solution is very much missing out on the potential that is in front of them.
Yeah, absolutely. And Neil, I'm also curious to ask you about your entrepreneurial mission in terms of having the focus on making sure that entrepreneurs and people in business feel empowered. What does that mean to you, buddy?
To me, you know, when I was younger, I worked in a lot of work environments that were some that were physically violent, a lot that were psychologically very, very traumatic for a lot of people. Really dangerous places. And you know, that had a real impact on me. And the impact was that a lot of people go home as a result of work feeling less, than, feeling used. And really the mission I have is that people can go home feeling better than when they went to work. You know, work can be a place where people find connection, they find meaning, and organizations don't have to, you know, use people. They can build people up, and I think that that's possible, and everybody wins in that equation. You know, and I think that's this idea that one party has to win or benefit and the other party has to lose. I don't think that's necessary. I think everybody can. There's enough abundance in the world that everyone can win, and that includes the organization and the people that are within it. And is that an easy call to action? I would say absolutely not. but you know, it is a meaningful one for me, and you know, my entrepreneurial journey has led me to that. You know.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, part of what I think is important in life is sort of celebrating the wins in life, and no matter how big and small they are, buddy. So tell me, in your view, how do you celebrate the wins in life? And when you look at your life from a 30,000 foot view, how do you think you want your legacy to be determined?
You know, it's interesting. My wife would probably tell you that I don't celebrate enough. So I could probably use a little bit more work there, and I think there's a lot of entrepreneurs that would probably say something similar. But I really, you know, I'm a very active person. Every time I go out on my mountain bike, every time I go skiing, you know, to me, that's actually how I celebrate, because my capacity and my opportunity to do that is how I balance out, you know, the fact that I've put in almost 50 hours this week, and I'm not even halfway into Thursday, you know. So it's, to me, it's the celebration is a balancing act with the hard work and drive towards a meaningful goal.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, go ahead, sorry.
I was going to say, and your question about legacy is connected to my highest value. My highest value is to have exponential positive impact. And human beings struggle with linear thinking, or struggle with exponential thinking, and are familiar with linear thinking. So it's hard to measure, but for me, it's really that impact. If we're working on 6 continents, that's a legacy I'm proud of. Working with hundreds of leaders, that's a legacy I'm proud of. And so to me, it's enabling people at scale and like by volume, and not necessarily in a way that's easy to measure.
Yeah, absolutely. And my final question for you this afternoon has to do with how do you define business diversity?
Oh, business diversity. Well, I think there's probably an unending amount of ways that I could take that question. So it's an interesting question for that. But I think for me, in what we do regarding psychological safety and developing team learning behaviors, creating the conditions for everyone to thrive in an organization. For me, business diversity is being able to do that in different industries. So we have a lot of success in financial industries, financial services. We have a lot of success in medical field. We've worked with publishing companies. We've worked with accounting. We've worked with lots of different companies, and it's also companies like public works and call centers and places where there's less corporate and more less of that sort of high level corporate work and more of the sort of everyday person, the average person. I want to touch those people's lives as well. And to me, that's what business diversity is being able to take something that I feel is a human condition that we can work positively towards and being able to do it in multiple domains.
Yeah, absolutely. And finally, Neil, tell me if people want to get connected with you personally or the good business endeavors that you're involved with, buddy. What's the best way they can do that?
Contacting us through the website, Aristotle Performance, Aristotle like the philosopher, performance.com. And then also LinkedIn is a place where I'm quite active. So Neil Pretty. And yeah, that's Mr. Pretty, just like it sounds, on LinkedIn. Somebody had to have the name, right? So might as well be a guy with a crazy mustache. So.
Well, Neil, I always say I like to be a trendsetter in life. So you got that going for you, right?
Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, Neil, I really appreciated our time together talking about leadership, performance, and business, and everything in between. But your time on my behalf and work in the space is most appreciated, and I want to thank you for being here this afternoon.
Wonderful. Thank you very much for having me. I think you're doing a fantastic job with the podcast and really enjoy it. And just, it's great to continue having these conversations with more people. So I appreciate your time and your energy and efforts as well.